This is part 1 of the Spirit Child, Tessa Lamar novels, Book 3. Written by Kathryn M. Hearst. Narrated by Holly Adams. Be sure to subscribe to Kathryn's channel where you can find part 2 of this audiobook, along with more of Kathryn's paranormal and contemporary romance novels.
Chapter 1. They say daughters soften their fathers' hearts, but this little girl had buried a pair of scissors in her daddy's chest. What in heaven's name could turn a 9-year-old pageant queen into a serial killer? The child moved her tongue in and out of her mouth as she made red slashes across the paper. I leaned closer to the glass to get a better look at the drawing. As if she sensed me watching, she stood and pressed the drawing to the observation window. Well, that's gruesome. I couldn't tear my eyes from the image of a man with large gashes across his torso. The subject matter came as little surprise, but the quality of the drawing shocked me. The group home manager tells me she spends most of her free time drawing. Haley, my best friend and the girls' lead therapist, tapped her pen on the desk. She's obviously advanced. Most kids don't have that level of realism in their drawings until their early teens. I turned to Haley. She's small for her age. Any underlying medical issues? None noted, but the information came from a next-door neighbor. We're still waiting on her school records. I turned my back to the glass. She's nonverbal? As far as we know, she hasn't said a word since confessing to the police. Haley ran a hand over her swollen belly and turned to the intern. Go encourage her to draw another picture. The young man, who didn't look old enough to have graduated high school, let alone a 4-year university, hurried from the room. I couldn't help but wonder if his eagerness had more to do with working with the patient or escaping before Haley went into labor. With 4 weeks until her due date, she already looked like she'd pop if she bumped into a sharp object. Will you do it? She turned to me with a hand on her back. I glanced at the little girl. Do you think she did it? Does it matter? Haley dipped her chin and pushed her lower lip out. She needs someone to stand up for her either way. I'd met Haley during our freshman year of college and had bonded over ice cream and late-night study sessions. I thought I'd developed an immunity to her pouty puppy face. I was wrong. Haley, you know I don't treat kids. She's the only one on my caseload I haven't been able to transfer. I wouldn't ask, but I'm desperate. Her free hand moved to her lower back. Maybe it's my hormones, but I care more than I should about this one. Her candor surprised me. Haley's caseload consisted of mostly children. What was it about this one that had drawn her in? I have my hands full between the police department and the guys. There's 6 other therapists here. Why can't one of them see her? The mention of Orange County PD reminded me of the stack of paperwork waiting at the station. Officially, I worked part-time as a victim's advocate. Unofficially, I provided special services, aka psychic readings, on an as-needed basis. Lately, they'd needed me enough to provide a benefits package. They've all seen her, but Haley hung her head. She freaks them out. My mouth fell open. That's unprofessional to say the least. Normally, I'd agree. She frowned and turned back to the glass. What aren't you telling me? I grabbed the girl's chart and flipped through the pages. Jolene Parks, only child. No known psychological trauma until her stepfather murdered her mother in the next room, and she allegedly took justice into her own hands. As you said, she's quite the artist. I nodded, waiting for her to get on with the explanation. 3 of my colleagues claim she drew pictures of their dead family members. Jolene wrote a letter from one of the therapist's recently deceased husband. She's caused quite a stir in the office. I narrowed my eyes. Haley, a self-proclaimed agnostic, worshipped at the altar of scientific research. She'd dismissed my gifts as intuition. Although, since a couple of the murder investigations I'd worked hit national news, she'd shown more interest. She's a medium? Haley shrugged. At the very least, she's very intuitive. Well, crap. How am I supposed to walk away from the case now? Tessa, I know how you feel about kids, but spend some time with her. If you don't establish a therapeutic bond, I'll transfer the case to county. I'd completed my graduate internship and spent the first 2 years of my career at the county mental health facility. The people there did the best they could with too many patients and too little funding. Where's her biological father? Haley smiled like she'd already won. Not involved. Somewhere in Afghanistan. The army tracked him down, but he demanded a DNA test. The neighbor told the cops he left before she was born. Sounds like a hell of a father. A familiar pain tightened my chest. I had first-hand experience growing up without a dad. We don't know the circumstances. He could be in the military to support his daughter and miss her terribly. Or he could be just another sperm donor that walked out on his kid. She cocked her head to the side and gave me her practiced therapist smile, closed-mouthed, patient, waiting for me to realize I'd revealed something important. I waggled my finger. Oh, no, you don't. I'm not the client here. I know I have abandonment issues. You're right. He could be up for Father of the Year award, a regular stand-up kind of guy. Haley nudged me. Speaking of guys, how are yours? I glanced at the 2-stoned engagement ring on my finger and didn't bother to hide my goofy smile. They're good. Aaron's working a lot these days. There's a rumor he's being considered for a promotion. Bryson's building an addition onto Charlie's house with the insurance money from the fire. A second bath, I hope, along with a huge master bedroom. Bryson and I had moved into my grandfather's house after I'd inadvertently burned my apartment building to the ground. I'd always think of it as Charlie's house, but we'd decided to make it our own. She smirked. Yeah, I don't see how a king-sized bed would fit in Charlie and Dottie's old room. My cheeks heated. I still hadn't gotten used to discussing my unusual domestic situation with anyone but my guys. It's just me and Bryson in the house. For now. She tilted her head. Are you two still running the medicine shop out of your living room? Bryson and I decided to close up for a while when Aaron and I were working on the serial killer case at Christmas. Every once in a while, someone shows up begging for help. Bryson says he'd be content sprucing up the house and sculpting, but I'm not sure I believe him. I think he misses the shop. Haley knew Bryson and I served as medicine people for local members of the Cherokee tribe. However, she didn't know that our practice included actual magic, shifting into our spirit animals, or that we were Nunnehi, the Cherokee equivalent to fairies. Some things were private, even between besties. So you do have extra time? She gave me a playful nudge. Come on, Tessa. Maybe it'll do you some good. How so? She rubbed a wide circle over her baby bump. You're engaged to 2 studly guys. Surely one or both of them will want kids one day. You know that's a deal breaker. The very idea of having kids put the fear of God into me. Not that I minded other people's children. I'd happily babysit. But I hadn't exactly had a healthy maternal role model growing up. Haley frowned. You're not your mother. I winced and turned back to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in the other room. I'd worked hard to squash any behaviors that remotely resembled Darlene, but I had no doubt some of her influence remained. I wouldn't risk a child grown up the way I had, but I would risk my no minors policy to end the conversation. I'll sit with her for a bit and let you know if I think I can work with her. Haley sprang to her feet and gave me a hug, which proved challenging with the baby in the middle. Thanks, Tessa. You're the best. She has 15 minutes left in her session, but you can go long today. Uh-huh. I haven't agreed to see her. My very pregnant friend bounced on the balls of her feet. But you will. I have a good feeling about this. Okay. Stop that, or you'll jiggle the baby loose. I walked into the hall and took a minute to collect my thoughts. Unlike Haley, I hadn't bothered to obtain a certification in play therapy while in grad school. Heck, I'd barely paid attention during the child psychology lectures. Until 5 minutes ago, I was dead set against treating kids. Jolene glanced over her shoulder when I walked into the room. Her eyes narrowed as if to sum me up. Evidently, I hadn't impressed her. She pursed her lips and turned back to her latest drawing. Great! I'm off to a wonderful start. I'll take it from here, I said to the intern. Thanks. He seemed relieved. Too relieved. This guy was either strung tight or the girl freaked him out as much as Haley's pregnant belly. I sat across the table from the child and waited for her to acknowledge me. After several minutes had passed, I turned to the observation window. The tinted glass obscured my view of Haley, but I gave her a dirty look anyway. Jolene slid a blank piece of paper in my direction. Thank you. I chose a green-colored pencil. My name's Tessa. The girl nodded without looking up. Do you go by Jolene, or do you have a nickname? She shrugged without meeting my eyes. I drew the only thing I knew how, 2 palm trees beside a flat ocean, and debated how to go about counseling someone who refused to speak. I'd participated in many one-sided conversations, but this was something entirely different. Curious to see if the girl would notice, I drew my magic to the surface. Heat rose from the center of my being as my spirit animal, the firebird, stretched her wings. Jolene continued to draw, but the scratching of her pencil grew louder. I glanced at the window and sighed. Haley needed me to do this. Lord knows how many times she'd been there for me over the years, but I had a sinking feeling I would let her down. Out of my comfort zone didn't come close to describing how I felt around this child. Jolene pushed her drawing toward me and sat back with her little arms folded. You're very talented. My brain came to a screeching halt when I looked at the paper. The girl had drawn the likeness of my biological mother. I was an infant when she'd died, but I knew every contour of her face. Her spirit had come to me for as long as I could remember. Jolene reached across the table and patted my hand. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Is this someone you know? She shook her head and wrote 2 words on the scrap paper. Your mommy. My stomach fell into my shoes. Not being switched at birth, but in my case, it had happened. My grandfather, Charlie, had tried to give me a normal life when he played a magical game of shells with me and Darlene's stillborn infant. I knew his heart was in the right place. I'd lost my mom, and Darlene had lost her daughter. Unfortunately, the woman proved uninterested and ill-equipped to raise a child. The phone rang again. I glanced at the screen and pressed the answer button. Hi, Grandma. Your mama is trying to reach you. I was on the highway. I'm almost home now. Everything okay? My great-grandmother lowered her voice. She's in rare form, craving dinner from a sack when I've been cooking for 3 days straight. Maybe it'll pass? Let's hope so. We won't survive months of this. Grandma laughed. Bye, Tessa. See you soon. 25 years after unknowingly adopting me, Darlene was pregnant with my little brother or sister. Unlike Haley, who handled her impending motherhood with grace, Darlene behaved like carrying a baby was a crisis of monumental proportions. I'm definitely not in the right headspace to deal with her right now. I needed to talk to someone about what had happened with Jolene Parks, someone who understood magic. Lucky for me, I had just the person and knew right where he'd be. I parked in the drive between Charlie's house and my great-grandmother's little pink cottage. My cousins had already set up a large party tent, tables and chairs for the impending baby shower from hell. My contributions to the shindig included decorations and party games. Since Darlene's boyfriend had insisted on a gender-inclusive affair, I was a little nervous about playing Tinkle in the Pot with a bunch of men. Rather than risk screwing it up and hearing about it until Armageddon, I'd delegated the responsibility to my cousin Tank. I followed the sound of hammering to the tent. There, in the afternoon sun, stood a sight that stilled my breath and quickened my pulse. Bryson, my shirtless fiancé, stretched to his full 6 feet too many inches to care height and hung Christmas lights. Bryson glanced from me to the sky and back.
Hey, babe, you're running late?
I have an hour before the festivities. That's plenty of time. I wandered through the yard, admiring his handiwork. This'll look fabulous all lit up. Who says you can't use holiday lights year-round? He wiped his brow with a bandana and stuffed it into his back pocket.
Darlene's been trying to reach you.
I know. I'll talk to her in a bit. I drew a circle in the dirt with my toe. There's something I want to discuss with you first.
Does this have something to do with your meeting with Haley today?
I'm thinking about taking on one of her patients while she's on maternity leave. He reached for another nail.
Yeah?
I met her today. She's 9. I hedged, trying to find the words to tell him about the session with Jolene.
Are you sure you have time? You've been swamped at the station, and we need to make a decision about the medicine shop. I had 3 people come to me for healing today.
Bryson pounded the nail into a 2x4. Maybe we should start locking the gate. I missed using my magic to help people, but I certainly didn't miss the tribal politics that came along with it. As the 2 remaining Nunnehi on Earth, the position should have been mine or Bryson's without a fight. Unfortunately, nothing was simple when dealing with the tribal elders.
Or maybe we should agree to put in office hours at the tribal house and train some others. Nothing says we have to see to everyone ourselves.
Counseling the kid will be 12 weeks tops. I can't see Haley becoming a stay-at-home mother. She loves her work too much. We can stall a decision that long. I snatched the box of nails from the table and walked to his side. Bryson draped the strand of lights over the nail and moved to the next post.
I thought you didn't work with kids?
I don't, normally. This one's different. He kissed the corner of my mouth and took a nail.
It'd be a welcome change of pace from the ghosts and homicidal maniacs.
Oh, boy. I doubted I'd get a better opening. Actually, Bryson stopped mid-swing and turned to me. She confessed to killing her stepfather. He set the hammer on the table and gave me his full attention.
Tessa.
Before he could gather his thoughts and make a case against working with Jolene, I pulled the sketch of Achila from my bag. I think she's a psychic or a medium of some sort. She hasn't spoken since losing her parents, but she draws.
A 9-year-old drew that?
Bryson cocked his head.
It looks a little like you.
While I appreciated the compliment, I didn't look anything like the lithe beauty in the drawing. The girl told me it's my mother. It's the spitting image of Achila. He ran his hand over the back of his neck, but his eyes remained fixed on the drawing.
Not many 9-year-olds kill their parents. Could she be trying to manipulate you?
Maybe, but like I said, this is a picture of my mother.
Do you think you can help her?
I don't know, but I think I should try. Haley hasn't been able to transfer her to anyone else. The other therapists are afraid of her.
I'll stand behind whatever you decide. but it seems to me that you've already made up your mind.
He slung an arm around my shoulder.
You surprise me.
Surprise you? I wrinkled my nose and stepped away. You're all sweaty.
It's not like you to look before you leap.
His eyes darkened as he moved closer. I put my hands up and skittered behind a table. Stop right there, mister. We're already running late. I have to finish the shower decorations. The corner of his lips curled.
I have a different kind of shower in mind.
My stomach did a cartwheel. We both won't fit in our tiny bathroom, remember? He lunged and drew me into a tight embrace.
We've managed before.
I met his deep brown eyes and melted. Let's go, before someone sees us. Tessa Marie, there you are. I've been calling you for hours. Darlene made a show of waddling down the front steps. She set her hand on her cantaloupe-sized belly. I'm craving one of those little square hamburgers from Crystal's. I'd passed the restaurant on my way home, but refused to feel guilty about depriving my pregnant mother of fast food. I must have forgotten to turn my phone off silent after my meeting. I'm sure Grandma has enough to feed a small army in there. Darlene sniffed her disapproval and wandered into the tent. Honestly, Tessa, how is everything going to be done in time? We can't have people showing up with naked tables, and I thought you said we'd have balloons. I plastered a smile on my face and counted to 10. It'll be ready in time, and Aaron's bringing the balloons. She patted her teased and shellacked hair. What were you thinking having this outside? I'm turning into a puddle already.
It'll cool off when the sun sets.
Bryson set his hand on the small of my back.
You look lovely. Pregnancy agrees with you.
I dipped my chin to hide my grin. Aren't you sweet? Darlene winked. Swinging her hips far enough to dislocate her fanny, she walked inside. Promise me you'll never let me become my mother?
Daughters are their mother's worst critics. I think we do the best we can for our kids with what we're given.
Well, some of us weren't given much, I smirked. He drew me against his chest and swatted my backside. Hey, what was that for?
I think you know.
He brushed his lips across my ear.
Where were we?
I don't recall. Why don't you kiss me until I remember? And that's exactly what he did. Chapter 3. My extended family descended on us as Aaron and I tied the last of the helium balloons to the tent poles. Vehicle after vehicle bumped their way down the uneven drive. Cousins I hadn't seen since Charlie's funeral poured out of cars and pickup trucks.
You're related to all of them?
Aaron watched the redneck parade with wide eyes. Could it be the prospect of facing the entire family worried my unflappable police detective? Most of them. Some aren't blood. Grandma has a way of picking up strays. He slipped his arms around me and whispered,
Just like her great-granddaughter.
I nuzzled into his chest and breathed in his cologne, a spicy wood scent that curled my toes.
Tessa Marie, where do you want this?
My cousin Tank hoisted a cornhole board in the air. I eased from Aaron's embrace and squinted at the freshly painted image of a large pink vagina on plywood. What in the nine hells is that? Tommy, a.k.a. Tank Jr. or TJ, ran to me with his hands full of beanbags and flashed me a toothless grin. It's called making babies cornhole. These here are the tadpoles. Oh, dear Lord. I had to give Tank points for creativity, but the sperm-shaped beanbags gave me the willies. Better put that over by Charlie's house. I don't think Grandma will approve. Why? The boy scrunched his face and looked from me to the tadpoles. I repressed a groan, patted the boy on the back, and motioned to his father. Go ask your daddy.
Nice dodge, Aaron chuckled. I have to say, this is my first baby shower. I wasn't sure what to expect.
This is my first with men. From the looks of it, it's going to be interesting. Grandma walked down the porch steps with enough banana pudding to serve 2 counties.
It's as wrong as hot pants and Sunday service. Men don't belong at baby showers. Let me get that for you.
Aaron took the dish from her and moved to the food table.
Put it over beside the strawberry cake and blueberry pie,
Grandma called after him. She glanced around the tent.
You did a fine job setting up. It looks real nice out here.
Thanks, Gram. I bent to hug her. Bryson's tending the grill. The chicken will be ready in about 15 minutes. Aaron returned empty-handed.
Anything else need to come outside? If it's not too much trouble, we could use some more ice. I'm all out, but there's some in the freezer at Charlie's.
We watched Aaron walk away like a couple of lovesick girls. Grandma sighed and patted my shoulder.
I guess I should call it Tessa's now.
It'll always be Charlie's house to me, no matter what we do to it or who lives there. I caught a glimpse of my cousin Tank carrying another piece of plywood and cringed. Grandma set her hands on her hips.
What in tarnation is that?
Tank's tanned skin turned an odd shade of red.
It's pinned a tail on the donkey. That ain't no donkey, and those ain't tails.
She thrust her chin forward and ground her dentures. Put it over with the cornhole. I covered my mouth to keep from giggling. Tank had decided to stick to the baby-making theme for both his games. Grandma, you might want to steer clear of that part of the yard tonight. She shook her head in disgust.
This is what happens when you invite men to women's parties. Thank goodness you found the only 2 boys around these parts with any common sense.
I take exception to that comment. Darlene sidled up to Grandma. Stone's got plenty of sense. I took in my mother's stretchy black leggings and tight leopard print shirt and doubted the truth in her words. My little brother or sister didn't stand a fighting chance with what nature would give them, but I intended to make sure my sibling had all the nurture I could give. Mama, maybe it's time for maternity clothes? Darlene set her hands on her hips. All the fashion magazines say a baby bump is the latest accessory in Hollywood.
All that spandex isn't good for the little one. He needs room to grow.
Grandma shook her head as she wandered off, muttering under her breath. Stone, Darlene's beau, carried a tray of burgers into the tent. His careful steps contrasted his green complexion and wrinkled nose. The poor man could barely see over the top of the piles of charred meat and buns. I motioned to my mother. The vegan looks like he's going to hurl all over Bryson's burgers. You might want to go help. What? Why me? I'm the guest of honor. I don't have to work. She huffed and planted her widening backside into a chair. Aaron appeared in the nick of time and took the platter from Stone. I hurried to the food table and cleared a spot for the hamburgers. Having fun yet? Aaron scratched the stubble on his jaw.
Did you see the pin the sperm?
Yep, and so did Grandma. Promise you'll shoot me if I turn into my mother?
Shoot you? No. Run for the hills? Yes.
Needing a break from the insanity of my family, I slid my arms around his waist. Are you sleeping over tonight?
I could do that. I'm off tomorrow. Besides, that party game got me thinking.
His blue eyes met mine, and he kissed me. TJ popped out from beneath the tablecloth and grinned like he'd heard tomorrow's winning lottery numbers. Is that your boyfriend?
Yep.
Aaron winked. My mama says you got 2. Says you're a hussy. TJ stared, waiting for an answer. I made a mental note to thank my cousin Lulu Rose. Aaron squatted to eye level with the kid.
Tessa isn't a hussy. She has 2 boyfriends because she's too smart and beautiful to only have one.
TJ narrowed his eyes. Where's the other one? I rested my hand on Aaron's shoulder. The man never ceased to amaze me. He's the guy with the long hair grilling the chicken. TJ glanced over his shoulder at Bryson, then turned back and noticed Aaron's badge. You're a cop?
I am.
Cool. TJ leaned closer. My daddy don't like cops, but I do. Do you have a gun? Before Aaron could go any further down that road, Bryson approached the table with a platter of barbecued chicken. TJ's eyes widened. You're the other boyfriend. Bryson glanced between Aaron and me.
What am I missing?
TJ, this is Bryson. Bryson, meet my little cousin TJ. His father's the one who brought the interesting shower games. Bryson chuckled and extended his hand.
Nice to meet you.
The kid slapped Bryson's palm, high-five style, and took off toward his mother. Mama, Tess ain't no hussy. She's beautiful. Oh, God. Can we leave now? I pressed my fingers to my temples.
Not until we eat. I've been smelling that chicken since I got here.
Aaron grabbed a plastic plate and walked to the end of the line.
It'll get better once the alcohol starts flowing.
Bryson swung his arm around my shoulder and guided me behind Aaron. As if on cue, my cousin DeWitt walked by with a baby bottle in each hand. We watched with quiet fascination as he sucked on one, then the other, in rapid succession.
Do I want to know?
Aaron stared until the line moved and gave him access to the potato salad. It looks like Coke in one and whiskey in the other. I skipped the carbs and went for plain old salad. Bryson eyed my plate.
Would that be considered double fisting?
Only if they both contain alcohol. I speared the chicken breast with the least amount of sauce and moved to an empty table. My men joined me, each with a plate overflowing with food. With a pang of jealousy for their metabolisms, I shoveled a bite of lettuce into my mouth. Life wasn't fair.
Are you dieting?
Bryson ate a forkful of Dottie's macaroni and cheese. Since moving in with you, my jeans are a little snug. I'm trying to nip it in the bud. Aaron held an overloaded cheeseburger in one hand and a beer in the other.
The trick is exercise in moderation.
I can see that. I smiled, but internally I squirmed. I did not want to have this conversation. All righty, everyone. It's time for some party games. My cousin Lulu Rose shouted from the center of the tent. Each table will get one set of messy diapers. You'll have 5 minutes to identify the poop. The table who gets all 5 right in the shortest time gets first dibs at the desserts. Tank walked over and unceremoniously dropped a plastic bag of rolled-up diapers in the center of our table. Bryson wore an expression of pure confusion. Aaron dropped his burger and pushed his plate away.
Tell me that he didn't take a dump in those.
I grabbed the bag, unfolded the first diaper, brought it to my face, and sniffed. Stop goofing around and help me. What kind of candy bar made this? Bryson's brows climbed into his hairline.
Excuse me?
Realizing they had no idea how to play the game, I licked the poop smear inside the diaper. Aaron turned his head and gagged. It's a candy bar. Come on, help me. I'm not eating lettuce and chicken so I can get leftover brownie crumbs for dessert. 2 tables over, Uncle Cecil called out,
We have it. Snickers, Baby Ruths, Zero Bars, Kit Kats, and Rolos.
Oh, so close. You have one wrong. Lulu Rose glanced over the crowd. I knew my chocolate. I also knew my cousin's wife loved to stump people. I rummaged through the brown-streaked diapers and jumped to my feet. Baby Ruth, Zero, Kit Kat, Rolos, and O. Henry's. Lulu Rose's eyes narrowed. We have a winner! Bryson and Aaron stared as I did a jig and took a victory lap to the dessert table, but I didn't care. I had a piece of strawberry cake calling my name. When I stopped celebrating, several of my family members stared with stunned expressions, while others whispered words like shameless and hussy. Bryson and Aaron both stood to come to my aid, but Aaron's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, held up a finger, and stepped away from the crowd. After becoming engaged to both of them on Christmas Eve, the family rumor mill had spun with the centrifugal force of a carnival ride. Bryson took my hand and whispered,
"Don't let them get to you."
Before I could reply, Darlene's voice rang out over the whispered accusations. "Y'all need to shut the hell up and leave her alone. Tessa, Marie, and those boys aren't hurting nobody. They're happy. Besides, if Grandma don't have a problem with it, I don't suppose the good Lord does either." I turned in time to see my great-grandmother nod. Lulu Rose whispered something to Tank, and he smirked. Darlene's face heated as she pointed at my cousin's wife. "People in glass houses shouldn't talk, Lulu Rose. I may be pregnant, but that don't mean I haven't been at the bar lately. In fact, Stone and I were there last weekend. We saw you rubbing up on what's-his-name." Tank turned and stared at his wife, who resembled a fish gasping for air. Stone squeezed my mother's shoulder.
"Relax, sweetheart. Getting upset isn't good for the baby."
"Now see what y'all hypocrites made me do." Darlene burst into tears and marched toward the house. "Oh, boy." I tugged Bryson's arm. "I should go after her." He drew me close.
"Stone can handle it."
I can't believe she stood up for me. Not only had she defended me, she'd likely caused some hefty marital strife between Tank and Lulu Rose. Aaron cleared his throat.
"Hey, Tessa. Sorry to ask. Any chance I can get you to do a walkthrough on a death scene tonight?"
Normally, I'd ask for more information. However, tonight the details didn't matter. Not when he'd handed me a legitimate reason to run away from the prying eyes of my extended family. I turned to Bryson. "Want to come?"
"You two go. I'll stay and help clean up."
He yanked me against him and kissed me like he meant it, right there in front of my entire family and Grandma and God. Chapter 4. Aaron held my hand as he navigated the car down the back roads. He hadn't said much since leaving the baby shower, but I didn't need my psychic abilities to know it was on his mind. He turned right, heading west. "Where are we going?" I studied his profile.
"Okoy. Normally I wouldn't ask you to come out this time of night, but this case isn't adding up."
"I don't mind. It gave me an excuse to get the heck out of there."
"This one's off the record. We slip in, you do your thing, and we leave."
"Sure thing." I dipped my chin and replayed the horror show of a baby shower. He glanced at me and frowned.
"Are you okay?"
I pondered the question and surprised myself with the answer. You know what? I am. I haven't been close with my extended family since Charlie's funeral. The ones who matter accept us and our relationship. Aaron brought my hand to his lips.
"I love you."
"I love you too." A warm, fuzzy feeling similar to a wine buzz settled into my bones.
"I have news."
He turned off the country road and into a trailer park.
"It's official. I'm up for that promotion."
"That's great! Congratulations!" I squeezed his hand. The chief had hinted about a promotion after Aaron and his partner had solved the Christmas killer case. Of course, they had a little help from a ghost, Bryson and me, but Aaron had busted his butt.
"I couldn't have done it without you."
"You'll get it." I smiled bright until he parked in front of the saddest trailer I'd ever seen. He shrugged and glanced out the window.
"Solving this case will help."
"Are you going to give me details, or am I walking in cold?"
Cold. This one has me perplexed.
He turned.
Tessa, listen. I couldn't get clearance for you to be on this case. I'm breaking the rules, but everything I do after tonight has to be by the book.
I understand. He shot me a dubious look and opened his door. I followed him. I mean it. The promotion's a big deal. I can play by the rules, too.
I hope so.
He entered a code into the lockbox.
Ready?
As I'll ever be. The moment I entered the trailer, my lungs rebelled. Stale cigarette smoke and the presence of at least one restless spirit made it difficult to draw a breath. I took a moment and reinforced my metaphysical shields. They'd help keep the ghosts out of my head until I was ready to reach out to them. A threadbare couch sat in front of the window. Stains, too light to be blood, covered the avocado green upholstery. A basket with more toys sat in the corner. The Barbie dolls scattered across the beat-up coffee table reminded me of miniature murder victims. Aaron folded his arms and watched as I wandered into the kitchen.
Scene's been cleared. Touch whatever you like.
I nodded and ran my fingers over the dirty window. Nothing came. I lowered my shields a fraction and tried again. This time I caught an image of a blonde woman washing dishes. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but she smiled as she chatted to another female. Aaron, arms folded and spine stiff, studied a framed photograph on the wall. "Are you okay?" He startled and ran his hands over his arms.
I'm good. Get anything?
Not yet. The spectral energy in the trailer beckoned me to the end of the hall. I pushed the door open and took a step back. Though the authorities had removed the body, no one had bothered to clean the blood from the room. A gentle hand rested on my shoulder. I turned, expecting to find Aaron, but came face to face with the spirit of the blonde woman. Her energy surrounded me like a warm blanket. "I'm Tessa Lamar. I'm here to help find the person who hurt you." "I know who you are." The ghost held my gaze. "I don't need justice, Miss Lamar. I need you to save my daughter." Stunned, I searched my mind for a reason she'd know my name. "Is she in danger?" Before she could answer, a dark energy slammed into my back. I stumbled forward, catching the edge of the bed to break my fall. Aaron pulled me to my feet.
Are you okay?
Wounded pride. I didn't feel it coming until it was too late. I caught movement from the corner of my eye and followed the dark energy.
I think I saw it.
Aaron trailed behind me. Aaron couldn't see spirits, or he hadn't up until now. The ghost?
Yeah.
"I would have come had you asked nicely," I yelled, following the spirit down the hall to another room. I stood in the doorway, rooted in place. Not from the dried bloodstains on the floor, wall, and dresser. I'd expected those. My brain refused to make sense of the pink ruffled drapes hanging over a small window, or the mismatched purple comforter covering a twin-sized bed, the pageant trophies and rhinestone crowns covering several shelves. I couldn't wrap my mind around the photo of the blonde, alive and well, hugging an equally beautiful child. The bedroom belonged to a little girl, but not just any little girl. This room belonged to Jolene Parks. The malignant energy slammed into me a second time. I lost my balance and fell against the trophies, several of which tumbled around me. "Enough!" I motioned for Aaron to stay in the hall as I pushed myself to my feet. "Since I'm likely the only one who can help you, you might want to keep me conscious."
What can I do?
Aaron's hand hovered over his Glock. "Stay there." The energy congealed into the shadow of a man. A very angry man. The thing gave me the creeps. Something was desperately wrong with him in his life for his spirit to be so hateful. Try to use your words.
Scissors!
The voice exploded through the room.
Little bitch!
I didn't dare ask if he referred to me or his stepdaughter. Are you Mr. Parks? He charged me again, only this time I saw him coming and slammed my shields in place.
The male vic's name was Benjamin Wagner,
Aaron said from the door.
Let me help you.
No! Stay there! I struggled to keep the angry spirit from breaking through my defenses. His energy pounded away until the attack took on a physical nature. Pain shot through my head and brought me to my knees. Aaron rushed forward and took my face in his hands. The contact allowed me to draw upon his energy. Benjamin Wagner, however, refused to be deterred. The spirit surrounded us and drew in as if trying to wad us up like a sheet of aluminum foil. Aaron's back bowed from the pressure.
Son of a bitch!
We need to bind him. I met his eyes. We can't leave him here where he can attack someone else. Aaron nodded.
Tell me what to do.
Repeat after me. I drew a breath and opened my connection to my mother and Charlie. A spell whispered in my subconscious and fell from my lips. Black Crow, come now for this restless soul. Take him to his ancestors far from here. Black Crow, show him peace. We beseech you. Come. As Aaron said the spell, Mr. Wagner's spirit vanished.
I don't see it. Is it gone?
Yes, but I doubt he's gone for good. We might need to bring Bryson along next time.
I shouldn't have brought you here.
Aaron leaned against the wall. From the looks of it, the brief exchange with the spirit had zapped his energy.
We can't come back.
I'm guessing this is a rental. He could be a real problem for the next tenants. I've not encountered a ghost with that much strength. I turned to the photo of Jolene and her mother, wondering what they'd endured.
I thought I could get you in and out tonight. No more bending the rules.
He pulled me to my feet.
I mean it, Tessa. I have a lot on the line with the promotion. Internal affairs won't hesitate to fry me after the incident at the ballet.
The media had caught Aaron and I kissing on duty a few minutes before a serial killer blew up the building. I understand, but
no buts. Unless the chief clears you, you aren't to be within 100 miles of this investigation. I've received multiple calls from reporters about this case.
I shoved my hair behind my ears. Vultures, all of them.
One of the neighbors tipped them off. Like it or not, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little Miss Orlando confessing to murder is a news story.
I had to come back and permanently deal with Mr. Wagner. Aaron would have a fit, but he was already going to throttle me when he found out I'd agreed to treat Jolene Parks. After seeing the trailer and meeting her parents, I couldn't turn my back on her. She needed the kind of help only Bryson and I could provide. I knew that now more than ever.
We should go.
He turned for the door. What did forensics say about the stab wounds? Is the girl a suspect? He shook his head.
It's possible, but unlikely she did it. The angle was off, unless he happened to be on his knees. Even so, I doubt she had the strength to drive scissors through his sternum. The state appointed a psychologist to work with her. Maybe they'll be able to figure out what happened.
I knew exactly who the state appointed. What I'd yet to decide is how to tell Aaron, or if I should keep my mouth closed. Chapter 5. 2 days had passed since I'd met with Haley, but she appeared to have aged 10 years. Her normally tanned skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and sweat dotted her upper lip. Her entire body had swollen to the point her fingers resembled sausages as they moved across the keyboard. What did the doctor say? I broached the subject for the 4th time. Haley's gaze remained on the computer screen. I told you, My blood pressure is high and I'm holding water. I'll be fine once the baby is born. Right, but shouldn't you be on bed rest? She turned and gave me a death stare. It's my last day. I held my hands up and glanced at the clock. Are the people from the group home usually this late bringing Jolene? Haley hit save on the case file and turned. They're responsible for 10 kids and are notoriously understaffed. Word to the wise, make her appointments for the last of the day. It'll give you some flexibility without pushing other patients back. I wanted to argue, to tell her I hadn't made up my mind, but one look at her exhausted face and I couldn't do it. I don't plan to take on more patients. You're accepting the case? She grinned like she'd checkmated my king. As if I could say no to you. I smiled, though inside I debated telling her that I had a potential conflict of interest. The visit to Jolene's trailer wouldn't impact my ability to help her. In fact, the glimpse into the girl's home life might prove useful. However, it could be problematic if I was assigned to work with Aaron on the criminal investigation. Haley, I should tell you, the arrival of Jolene and her guardian interrupted my confession. The social worker looked as if she'd carried the child 3 miles uphill. Her hair stood at odd angles, and her wrinkled clothing was splattered with something brown. She released Jolene's hand and ushered the girl into the therapy room. Miss Haley, I need a moment of your time. There's been an incident. I'll start the session. I left her to it and joined Jolene. The child slumped into a chair with her chin on her chest. It didn't take an advanced degree to figure out that the bee in the social worker's bonnet had come from the little darling in front of me. Looks like you're having a rough day. She shrugged. Can you tell me what happened? I took a seat across from her. The girl sniffled. I waited a few minutes and changed tactics. Would you like to draw a picture of your day? Jolene shook her head. Okay. I stood and moved to the shelves of toys, hoping to find inspiration. How about Play-Doh? She crinkled her nose, but watched as I moved to the shelf containing games. I had her attention. I always hated the way that stuff smelled. My cousin Tank used to eat it like it was cookie dough. The little girl bit her lip to hide her smile. Let's play a game. You pick. With adults, the first session generally involved paperwork and discussing goals. The real work started after a therapeutic relationship formed. When treating kids, especially ones with a violent history, creating trust was the first step. Jolene walked to the shelves and ran her hand over the Candyland box, but her gaze remained on me. Watching my reactions, she moved to Jenga. Therapeutic games with titles like Bad Choices/Good Choices and The Angry Chimp were skipped altogether. I drew a breath and relaxed to keep my expression neutral. I wanted her to choose, but she appeared more interested in pleasing me. Despite my best efforts, I tensed when she reached the chess box. I knew the basics, but I'd always found it more annoying than fun. Jolene grinned and pulled the game from the shelf. So much for trying to please me. I forced a smile and reclaimed my seat. I don't remember all of the rules. Will you help me? She nodded and took her time setting up the board. When the pieces were in place, dead center in the squares and facing forward, Jolene motioned for me to go first. I hovered my hand above the pawn to the far right. She shook her head. I raised a brow and moved to the pawn on the far left. Jolene giggled and pointed to the pawn in front of my queen. I eased the piece 1 square, and she motioned for me to move it forward. A pawn can move 2 places? She pantomimed the difference between the first and subsequent pawn moves. I think I have it. 1 or 2 squares on the first move, and only 1 square after its left home plate? Jolene rolled her eyes but nodded. I laughed. Something told me she'd have plenty to say when she started speaking again. Who taught you how to play? Her grandmother. A voice whispered from the corner of the room. The child smiled and stared in the direction of the sound. I glanced over my shoulder at Jolene's mother, then to the glass separating the play and observation rooms. The sessions were more than likely taped, which meant they could become evidence. I had to be careful or risk causing more trouble for Jolene and losing my counseling license. The powers that be didn't exactly approve of talking to the dead during a therapy session. I faced the child, but spoke to the spirit. Can you tell me what happened today? Jolene's eyes widened and she shook her head. She'll tell you when she's ready. Right, Jojo? The little girl frowned at her mother's spirit and turned her attention back to the chess game. The spirit sighed. She's a good girl. She's been through a lot, Miss Lamar. You have to save her. I leaned forward and made eye contact with the child. I know, and I'm not going to give up. Haley opened the door. Hi, Jolene. This is Maria. She's going to sit with you while I talk to Tessa, okay? Her smile sank into a frown before she slid her blank mask back in place. She nodded once and cleared the pieces from the board. My heart broke for her. No kid should have to hide their emotions. Then again, no child should have to endure the loss of her mother or be involved in or witness a murder. I reached for Jolene's hand and gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. Thanks for the chess lesson. I'd like to play again sometime. She pulled away without meeting my eyes. In the hall, Haley and Jolene's social worker's long faces made my stomach ache. What else could possibly have gone wrong in this child's life? She's being moved out of the group home, Haley said. Did they find a foster family for her? The social worker frowned. Jolene attacked another child with a fork. She will be difficult to place. I tried to imagine that sweet girl chasing another kid around with flatware. What caused her to react so violently? The woman shook her head. It doesn't matter what the other child did. She stabbed him repeatedly. It took two of us to pull her off him. So, what now? I turned to Haley. More than likely, she'll be transferred to a state facility. As of today, there aren't any available pediatric psych beds anywhere in the area. Haley ran a hand over her belly. I'm sorry I brought you in, Tessa. You need to take a load off. I put my arm around her shoulder and guided her to the observation room. Once Haley was settled at the desk with her feet propped on a file box, I turned to the social worker. What if there's an approved foster care home with no other children? The woman's face softened into a combination of pity and loss. Our foster care homes are full. I knew of one home that had yet to take in their first child. All I had to do was convince my Aunt Dottie to finalize the application her and Charlie had started before he died. How long does she have before she's moved? The social worker shook her head. She can't go back to the group home. We aren't staffed to provide that level of supervision. The gears in my head spun like an out-of-control train. As her lead therapist, I'm going to Baker Act her. She's expressing suicidal ideations. She requires a 48-hour observation period, longer if her psychiatrist deems it necessary. Exactly how did you come to that conclusion? The woman set her hands on her hips. Haley stared as if I were the one who needed an evaluation. I shrugged. It's like my aunt always says, some people hear with their ears, while others listen with their eyes and hearts. Chapter 6. Quite proud of myself for coming up with a solution to the group home situation, I dialed my great-grandmother.
Hello?
Grandma's voice warmed my heart and brought on a case of the nerves. I could never fool her. She'd see straight through me. Hi, Gram. Is Dottie home?
Yes. Would you like to speak to her?
No, but I'd like to call a family meeting. She sucked in a breath, and I could practically hear her rolling her eyes.
Is everything okay?
Yes, everything's fine, but I have something important to discuss with you and Dottie. I'm on my way home now.
We'll be here.
See you soon, Gram. I love you.
Love you too. Be safe.
She'd said the right words, but failed to keep the skepticism out of her voice. Not that I could blame her. Lately, family meetings meant I'd royally screwed up. After stopping at the store for some of Dottie's favorite things, I rehearsed my speech while stuck in Interstate 4 traffic. An hour later, I'd traveled 15 miles and had a plan. I parked between Charlie and May's houses because 2 cars I didn't recognize blocked my driveway. I figured they belonged to tribe members seeking out Bryson for healing or a quick spell. Good. Hopefully, he'll be tied up for a bit. I went straight to the ladies. Once I had them on board, I'd present the new arrangement to Bryson as a done deal. After all, it was better to ask forgiveness than to beg for permission. Grandma glanced up from the stove and narrowed her eyes.
Last time we had a family meeting, you burnt your apartment down. Should I be worried?
Nothing's caught fire this time, I promise. I kissed her cheek and peeked into the pot. Chicken and rice? Yum.
Biscuits are in the oven.
She hip-checked me when I reached for the spoon.
Set the table.
Yes, ma'am. I grinned and pulled the soup bowls from the cupboard. How was your day? May cast me a dubious look.
You sure nothing burned down?
Tessa, I didn't hear you come in. Aunt Dottie gave me a quick hug. I brought you some peanut brittle and that cherry lime soda you like so much. She opened the silverware drawer and paused. What's wrong? Did you get fired? I laughed and set my hands on my hips. I'm trying to be nice. Why does everyone assume the worst?
Because we know you.
Grandma set dinner on the table.
Why'd you only set 3 places?
I fought the urge to cringe and sent up a silent prayer she hadn't invited Bryson. It's a family meeting.
Bryson's family. So's Aaron, but he had to work tonight.
She gave Dottie a quick wink. My grandma not only assumed the worst, she'd brought in reinforcements to handle my latest disaster. Yes, but
no buts, young lady.
Bryson came in as I filled our glasses with sweet tea. He wore old blue jeans, a black t-shirt, and the same weary expression as the ladies.
Sorry I'm late. Had to treat a case of poison ivy and bless a wedding blanket. Smells good, May.
Thank you. I know it's your favorite.
She winked and motioned to the table.
Everyone sit. Let's eat before it gets cold.
He flashed me his dimpled smile, the one that told me he expected me to complain about tribe members popping in. While I disagreed with his open-door policy, I had a hard time staying mad when he looked at me like that. Not to mention, I planned to lay a doozy on the 3 of them. After Bryson said grace and everyone's bowls were filled, I said, Haley asked me to take over for one of her patients, a little girl. Grandma and Dottie stared, likely wondering why I'd broken my cardinal rule about treating children. Bryson nodded. Come to find out, she's special. I took a sip of tea to calm my nerves. She can see ghosts.
Well, ain't that something?
Grandma took another bite. Bryson, on the other hand, put his fork down and gave me his full attention. The speech I'd prepared in the car slipped away along with my courage. Rather than laying out the pros of my plan, I vomited out the big fat con. She's the little girl on the news, the one whose mama was murdered. Dottie's eyes widened. They say she told the police she killed her father. Stepfather, and she didn't do it. Grandma pursed her lips.
Did she tell you that?
I shook my head. Her mother's spirit came to me and begged me to help. I met the stepfather's ghost, too. He's a nasty piece of work. I've never encountered anything so dark, and that's saying a lot, all things considered. Bryson sat back.
Is this the case you helped Aaron with the other night?
I hadn't planned for that question, especially not from him. Yes. He nodded, though his expression grew more troubled. What can we do to help? Dottie patted my hand. Well, I chose my next words carefully. Jolene, the little girl, is in trouble. Something happened at the group home, and they're trying to send her to a state psychiatric hospital. She needs a foster home with no other kids, and all the approved homes are bursting at the seams. Dottie eased her hand from mine and stood. Anyone need more tea? I kept my mouth shut as she moved around the kitchen. She did her best thinking while puttering. My great-grandmother asked,
What did the child do to be tossed out of the group home?
Grandma, you remember how it was for me when I was little? I was teased to death when I told people I saw spirits. The poor thing probably witnessed her stepdaddy killing her mother. She's so traumatized she doesn't speak.
I understand, Tessa Marie. Now answer my question.
She stabbed another kid with a fork. I risked a glance at Bryson and wished I hadn't. Thunderstorms moved behind his dark eyes. My great-grandmother tossed her napkin on the table.
Where's her family?
Her biological father's in Afghanistan. From what Haley can tell, he left before she was born. The army sent word to him, but who knows if he'll come home. Grandma's brows rose.
Taking care of a little one is a lot of work, especially one with so many problems.
Dottie nodded. I remember Tessa at that age. I'd hate to think what would happen to her if we hadn't stepped up to raise her. The girl needs someone who understands her magic. Bryson folded his arms.
Dottie's right. If the girl has magic, she needs to be with people who can help her learn to control it.
I'd set the hook. All I had to do was reel them in. I'm afraid she'll tell them she speaks to spirits, and the doctors will think she's hearing voices and diagnose her with schizophrenia. Grandma eyed the three of us.
Let me play the devil here. She talks to ghosts, stabbed a boy, and maybe killed her stepfather. Is it wise to take her in?
And it's a conflict of interest for you, isn't it?
Bryson turned to me. Wait, what? I thought he was on my side. I'm not even officially on the case. Aaron will have to understand. He frowned and took my hand.
I believe it would constitute a dual relationship, wouldn't it?
Leave it to Bryson to burst my bubble. He had a point. Having my great-aunt foster Jolene would change my relationship with the girl. All sorts of professional boundaries would blur. Potentially, I sighed. Probably. But what am I supposed to do? Turn my back when I may be the only person who can help her? Grandma sat back and lowered her gaze.
This is something we should all take some time to consider.
Dottie returned to the table with a determined look in her eye. In the meantime, I'll call the lady at the foster care office in the morning. Mine and Charlie's application was approved right before he died. I don't know if they'll let me take in a child now that it's just me. Chapter 7. Music spilled onto the deck as Bryson and I sat nursing our drinks. We'd established a Tuesday night tradition, going out for dinner, stopping in the local hole in the wall for a game of pool, and capping off the night watching a movie at home. Tonight, the third member of our relationship was running late, so we opted for burgers at the sports bar. Bryson set his empty beer bottle on the table.
Have you told Aaron about Jolene?
The conversation with the ladies the day before had left me uncertain. The absolute last thing I wanted to do was to invite another opinion. I was planning to, but he sounded exhausted when he called. I'd rather tell him when he's in a better mood.
The longer you wait, the more upset he'll be.
He motioned for the waitress and turned to me.
Would you like another?
I gulped down the remainder of my vodka cranberry. That depends. Are you driving?
The lady will have another. Make it a double. Club soda for me.
Bryson's grin made the server suck in a breath. She hurried away, blushing as bright as her red tank top. I laughed. Are you trying to get me drunk?
Drunk? No. Tipsy? Yes.
He winked and leaned close to whisper,
Tipsy Tessa kicks off her shoes. Drunk Tessa kicks off her jeans.
I ran my hand over his thigh. I thought you liked me naked.
I do, but not in public.
Bryson nuzzled my cheek and drew my earlobe between his teeth. I rolled my eyes, though he couldn't see the gesture with his face buried in my neck. I'd never once taken my pants off in a bar.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
Aaron kissed my cheek and slid into the chair beside me.
It's been a hell of a day.
Rough case? I squeezed his hand.
Yeah, I can handle almost anything except when the Vics are minors.
Bryson eased back.
Have a drink. I'm designated driver tonight. No can do. I have to head back soon.
Aaron met my eyes.
I hate to ask, but I'd like you in on this one. It's unique.
Unique how?
We found the remains of 4 kids so far. 3 have been there for some time. The other is more recent.
I fought to keep the sinking feeling in my gut from showing on my face. Aaron wasn't the only one who'd never get used to working cases involving dead minors. Sure, I guess.
Thanks, Tessa.
He glanced at Bryson.
You're welcome to come and wait in the car. It shouldn't take long. I'm hoping Tessa will pick up on a spirit or 2 from the perimeter. Unless you need me to drive her home, I'll pass. I have some work to do at the house. She can take my car. I'll have Samuels drop me off when we're done.
I know it's early, but is this a serial killer? I chewed my thumbnail. We'd worked a serial killer case a couple of months earlier, and I, for one, never wanted to do it again.
Probably. But I'd rather wait and see what you pick up on the scene before giving up the details.
Bryson glanced in my direction, then back to Aaron.
Tessa has some things she needs to discuss with you.
The waitress brought my cocktail, but I thought better of drinking it when I'd promised to go on a case. Although, a double shot of vodka might keep me from strangling Bryson for setting me up. Hadn't I just told him I'd rather wait to tell Aaron about Jolene? My blue-eyed detective placed an order for a double bacon cheeseburger with a side of sweet potato fries and turned his attention to me.
What'd you want to talk about?
I shot Bryson a death glare, but he shrugged as if it were no big deal. Aaron sat back and folded his arms.
Oh, boy. This isn't good, is it?
My men locked eyes. They had an annoying way of communicating that had nothing to do with words and everything to do with jaws and eyebrows. Judging by the heavy-duty sigh Aaron exhaled, their conversation hadn't gone well. I asked Dottie to foster Jolene, the little girl from the Wagner murders. There. I said it. No hemming or hawing, just the facts. Aaron picked up my drink, frowned, and set it back down. She's my patient. Well, she's Haley's patient, but I'm taking over her case because Haley's having pregnancy issues. Anyway, Jolene's in trouble at her group home and needs a place to stay. I thought it'd be best if we took her in. So much for controlling my verbal diarrhea. I couldn't help it. Aaron's jaw tensed more with each word I said. If he didn't unclench soon, he'd crack his molars.
Why exactly would it be best?
Bryson swooped in to save me, though his timing was a few minutes too slow.
The girl's a medium.
Aaron smirked.
You're on board with this? I wouldn't say that. More conflicted than on board.
So much for saving me. I shook my head and took Aaron's hand. I have to do this. She's alone and scared. If she's sent to a state hospital, they're going to diagnose her with schizophrenia and pump her full of medications.
When did you start seeing her?
Aaron's voice softened enough to give me hope. The day of Darlene's shower. He turned his head so fast, the other people in the bar might have thought I'd hit him. My pounding pulse drowned out the background noise. I had to explain, to make this right. I didn't know it was her trailer until I saw the pictures in her room.
You should have told me then.
I'd expected his anger, but the hurt in his eyes did me in. You're right. I should have.
How sure are you it's safe to have her around me and Dottie?
I squared my shoulders and raised my chin. I'd prepared myself for this question. 100% sure? They know what they're getting into after raising me. It's the people at the hospital I'm worried about. They won't understand her. May and Dottie can help her feel normal. Aaron sat straighter and spoke in his official cop voice.
I can't have you on the case.
I know. He pulled his hand back when the waitress returned with his dinner. Bryson squeezed my thigh under the table.
It's a complicated situation. Dottie's checking with social services to see if she can foster without Charlie. It all may be a moot point. Tessa has another conflict of interest as the girl's therapist. But if we can, we should help.
Aaron pushed his plate to the side.
Understood. But with the promotion on the table, I can't be at the house with her there. Not until the case is closed. And the way things are going, it could be a while.
I didn't think about that. The last thing I wanted to do was chase him off, not when the three of us were settling into our relationship. Bryson opened his mouth to speak, but his phone chirped. He glanced at the screen and sighed. Bad news? I jumped at the chance to get my fanny out of the hot seat.
Another poison ivy case. Give me a minute.
I dipped my head and chewed my thumbnail while Bryson sent a text.
Second thoughts about Dottie fostering the girl?
Bryson set his phone face down on the table. Feeling like a third grader who'd wet their pants at recess, I shrugged. I may have leapt before I looked. Aaron motioned to the server for the bill.
You'd better be sure about this. She's not a puppy you can return to the pound when things get tough, and Tessa, things will get tough.
Images of Darlene leaving me on Dottie and Charlie's doorstep flashed through my mind. I had no intention of having kids, adopted or the old-fashioned way. I simply didn't trust myself with the life of another human being, which is why I'd asked Dottie to take in the girl temporarily. You don't think I know that? This isn't a permanent situation. It's only until, hell, I don't know, until she gets a handle on her gift. Bryson and Aaron exchanged glances. Chapter 8. Aaron drove while I stared out the window, considering and reconsidering the situation with Jolene.
I can hear your gears grinding. Talk to me.
He tucked my hair behind my ear. I shifted closer to him. I'm sure I want to help her, but only if you're on board with it. Nothing comes before you and Bryson.
I'll support your decision.
Aaron had said the right thing, but his voice lacked conviction. Thanks. He brought my hand to his lips.
We'll make it work, but I'm going to miss you on the Wagner case. I think I could talk Chief into bringing you on. We have no leads.
Maybe being in a stable environment will help Jolene feel safe enough to talk about what happened. She had to have seen something.
Maybe.
Aaron turned onto a dirt road on the outskirts of Orlando and parked next to a squad car.
I doubt you'll find any reflective surfaces, but I'm hoping you'll pick up on something.
My magic had limits. Big ones. Sometimes I could see the past by reading the imprints of energy on shiny objects. Other times, I got diddly squat. Once in a great while, like the other night at Jolene's trailer, the spirit of the deceased came to me. But none of it was a given. I'll do my best. I reached for the door handle.
Tessa, wait. I don't see the medical examiner's van. The bodies may still be there. Stay on the perimeter. Promise me you won't get too close.
I stared, unsure if he thought I'd trample the evidence or if the concern in his voice was for my well-being. This isn't my first time on a death scene. Aaron ran a hand through his dark hair.
Not like this. It's awful. Promise me you won't look at her.
Crap. Okay. I stepped out of the car and squinted toward the glow of lights in the wooded field. The hum of generators replaced the chirps of crickets. A handful of CSI techs huddled over their coffee beside the mobile command post, a rolling miniature headquarters usually reserved for large-scale cases. Their haunted expressions told me Aaron hadn't exaggerated about the scene. I leaned close to Aaron and lowered my voice. How long before the press gets wind of this with the Moby sitting here?
Not long enough.
He led me under the awning where another CSI tech was suiting up in personal protective equipment. Samuels, Aaron's partner, exited the vehicle.
Nice of you to join us, Lamar.
I ignored the salty old detective's gruff tone. He used it for the benefit of the uniformed officers and techs. Beneath that crunchy outer shell beat the heart of a good guy. Hello to you too, Samuels. The techs looked up from their coffee. I'd earned myself quite the reputation in the Orange County Police Department, both for helping to solve cases and for other less savory events involving Detective Blue Eyes and Bryson. Aaron nodded to Samuels.
Is she cleared? Chief gave the okay, but said to stay away from the media.
Perfect. I dipped my chin to hide my flaming cheeks. On the last high-profile case I'd worked with Aaron, news cameras caught us kissing outside a building just before it blew up.
Red looks good on you, Lamar.
Samuels chuckled.
Suit up. Don't let him bother you. Someone pissed in his coffee this morning.
Aaron squeezed my shoulder.
Ready?
I nodded, pulled my hair into a ponytail, and tucked it under a plastic cap. Covered from head to shoe in plastic-coated paper, the three of us trudged through the field to the perimeter of the death scene. Besides the nose-wrinkling exhaust fumes from the generators, a smell I'd hoped to never encounter again hit me like bad Chinese food. I resisted the urge to cover my nose or clench my gut, though everything in me wanted to turn and run.
Hold it together, Lamar. We're still yards away from the body.
Samuels chuckled. I gave him a sideways glance. You're awfully cantankerous tonight.
He gets that way when kids are involved. We all do.
Aaron met my gaze.
You going to be okay?
I won't puke on the evidence. I swear.
Stick to the stepping plates while inside, except for a foot or two from the perimeter.
Aaron gave a uniformed officer our names and credentials and ushered me behind the yellow police tape. I took a moment to survey the lay of the land. The scene was easily the size of a kickball field. Shop lights illuminated the majority of the cordoned-off area. A tent sat in the center. Several people in paper coveralls knelt around what I assumed to be the freshest body. 3 other, smaller groups of techs worked in different locations. Aaron put his hand on my shoulder and lowered his head to meet my gaze.
Remember what I said? Eyes forward.
Got it. Go do what you need to do. I'm going to stick to the edges.
The white and green flags mark the search grid. If you need to enter that area, come back to the cap.
The cap, or common approach path, consisted of metal plates arranged like stepping stones that led to the bodies. I had no intention of getting close enough to the remains to need to use them. I'm good. I promise. Aaron gave me one last concerned look, turned, and walked up the path. In my official role as a victim's advocate, I rarely entered the actual death scene. My job involved speaking to the friends and family of the deceased. As a psychic, I generally walked the scenes after CSI had finished. Whatever Aaron had seen beneath that tent had rattled him. Without reflections to read, I had no clue what I'd find. I moved to a quieter area along the edge of the tape and drew my magic to the surface. The heat of the firebird, my spirit animal, washed over me. But that wasn't the magic I needed. I reached deeper, to the cold pit in the bottom of my being, and coaxed a part of me that attracted the dead to the surface. The part of me no one, including Bryson, understood. After meeting Jolene, I doubted the colder magic had anything to do with my heritage. Nunnehi weren't human. We didn't age the same, nor did we rely on spells for magic. It was part of our being. Although rare, some humans could see ghosts, but Bryson couldn't recall another Nunnehi having the gift, or curse in some cases. The spirit of a teen girl with the same pale blonde curls as Jolene appeared before me. She tilted her head and grinned as if she'd figured out the punchline to my joke. The joke, however, was on me. The ghost took my hand and tugged me forward. I dug my heels in and tried to break free of her grasp, but it was like she'd grabbed a hold of my bones. I'd been around spirits my entire life. Usually they were misty. Sometimes they could push me around. But this unnerved me. Wait, stop! I can't walk in there! The girl glanced over her shoulder and frowned the sort of frown usually reserved for spilled milkshakes and younger siblings. Like water from a tap in winter, fear ran down my spine and pooled in my shoes. This spirit child was dangerous. Can you speak? Her eyes narrowed. Do you have a name? She released my hand and pointed toward a live oak on the other side of the death scene, then motioned to herself. You want to go to the tree? I felt foolish playing charades with a dead girl. Rachel. Before I could form another question, she grabbed my wrist. This time, I caught a glimpse of her spectral hand inside my arm. Somehow, she had reached in and grabbed my bones. No matter how hard I pulled, I couldn't break her grip. We ran, or she ran and I trailed behind, through the crime scene. People yelled from all directions as we trampled across evidence markers. And my God, the smell. My stomach twisted like it was wringing itself out. The remnants of my burger rose in my throat. Lamar! Samuels called from my right. The spirit stopped a couple of yards from the tree. I turned my head toward the sound of the detective's voice and caught an eyeful of the little girl beneath the tent. Bloated, discolored, blonde. Chapter 9. What the hell happened? Aaron grabbed my shoulders hard enough to leave bruises, but they'd pale in comparison to the bruises on my ego. People scurried around the death scene like ants on a hill I'd destroyed. Not me exactly. The spirit had caused the havoc, though I couldn't exactly announce that little tidbit to the crowd. I leaned close. A ghost. I think there's another body. The spirit pointed to the ground and nodded. Here. It's right here. I stepped back from Aaron and rubbed my arms where his fingers had dug in. He stared, not at me, at her, at the spirit.
Matterson, I need a team over here now.
Samuels took me at my word, even if the man I called my mate didn't.
Tessa, do you have any idea what you've done? You may have cross-contaminated the scene. We'll have a hard time determining there's more than one killer.
Aaron searched the sky like God himself would write the answer to his problems in the stars. I'm sorry. She wouldn't let go. He split his attention between me and the spirit child.
I signed you in. You were my responsibility.
My traitorous eyes strayed over to the tent with the newest victim. What remained of the child hardly resembled a little girl, except the hair. The hair reminded me of Jolene. I wrapped my arms around my midsection and gasped. The second the pungent air hit the back of my throat, I dry-heaved.
Shit.
Aaron took my shoulders again. This time, he bent me forward and placed his hand between my shoulder blades.
Shallow. Through the nose.
Samuel shoved a barf bag into my line of vision.
Easy, Lamar. Nice and slow.
I managed to keep my dinner inside my body by sheer will alone. After another minute or two of focused breathing, I righted myself and offered Samuels a grateful smile. Aaron, however, had disappeared.
Don't worry. It happens to the best of us.
Samuels motioned to the bag.
Keep it.
How bad did I mess up the scene? He gave me a you really don't want to know the answer shrug.
Don't worry about Aaron. He's stressed about the promotion.
Oh, God. Did I ruin his chances? Will this count against him? Samuel shrugged again.
We have a fifth. I need evidence bags.
Matterson turned to me.
How did you know?
It was my turn to shrug.
Well, I'll be damned.
Samuel shook his head.
It's always an adventure with you.
The crime scene investigator grinned.
You're the psychic? I heard you were the real deal, but I never would have believed it. Good job. It's Lamar, right?
Yes, I'm Tessa Lamar. I reached to shake his hand and thought the better of it. I'd cross-contaminated enough evidence for one night. Aaron returned with a fresh pair of shoe covers for me and a photographer for the corpse. He cast a curious look at the new area of interest.
Good work. Sorry I snapped at you.
I shrugged again. It annoyed me when Samuels did it, but I understood the attraction to a gesture that answered any question without saying a darned thing. Aaron didn't seem to notice. He split his attention between me and the remains of the fifth victim.
Take off your booties and put them in an evidence bag.
The spirit of the girl hovered over the investigators as they painstakingly unearthed the remains. Rachel! I glanced at the people working around me. I had questions, but hated the thought of further embarrassing Aaron. How much more could I screw up? Her name is Rachel? Aaron should have been used to my weirdness, but he stared as if I'd farted in church. The spirit had a similar expression when she moved in my direction. Taking no chances, I folded my arms and took a step back. I would not let her drag me around again. Do you know her last name? No. Are there any more girls here? Call me a coward, but I stepped behind Aaron.
Everything okay?
He spoke without turning. Just peachy. I locked eyes with the ghost. Not here, but there are more. She looked up at Aaron, and a hint of an emotion crossed her face. They're under sidewalks near the big trees. I considered her words. Sidewalks near trees could be anywhere. Do you know who did this to them? The spirit tore her gaze from Aaron. The man in the blue car. We're here to help you. Can you tell me your name?" Her expression hardened into one usually reserved for adults. Adults who'd learned that nothing in life was free and trust came at the highest price of all. Any hope of getting a lead from the girl faded. "Are there other spirits here?" She smirked. "Good girls go to heaven." I cringed at the thought of the child wandering this field, thinking she hadn't earned the right to pass through the pearly gates. "That's not true. All children—" The spirit screeched and launched herself at me. I ducked further behind Aaron, who took the full brunt of her rage. He let out an unholy howl that made the hairs on the back of my neck try to run for cover. The ghost's arm and face punched through Aaron's personal protective equipment. She took a swipe at me, but missed. Getting stuck in the center of a grown man had slowed her down.
Burns, you okay?
Samuels had gone pale.
Tessa, what the hell is going on?
Aaron didn't answer. His muscles seized, and he shook like someone hit him with a taser, yet somehow remained on his feet. "Get out of there! Right now!" I reached for the ghost. Normally, my hand would pass through a spirit. However, nothing about this girl was normal. The little poltergeist grabbed my forearm with both hands and pried her way out of Aaron. She continued to rant about Rachel, but my attention had shifted to my collapsed mate. I knelt beside him and pressed my fingers to his forehead. Not that I thought he had a fever, but some weird instinct took over, and it seemed like the prudent thing to do. "Aaron, are you okay?" His long and lean body had folded into a fetal position, only tighter and stiffer.
Cold. Is it gone?
"Yeah." I took my gloves off and touched his cheek. Recognizing its mate, my spirit animal stirred. Warmth from the firebird flowed through my fingers. A uniformed officer called from the cap.
Does he need EMS?
"No," Aaron said through gritted teeth. I glanced over my shoulder. "He's okay. Hypoglycemic, and he skipped dinner."
Do you think you can stand?
Samuels squatted beside Aaron.
I can try. My muscles feel like they took a few 100 volts.
With Samuels on one side and me on the other, we managed to get Aaron to his feet.
That was some scary shit.
Samuels looked past Aaron to me. I've never encountered anything like it, or her. The last victim is Rachel. Didn't get the last name. There are more girls, but not here. She sat under sidewalks near trees. Aaron whispered,
I heard her. She referred to the perp as the man in the blue car. Why can I suddenly see and hear spirits?
No idea, but we'll figure it out.
You're rubbing off on him, Lamar.
Samuels chuckled. I opened my mouth to tell him to shut it when it dawned on me that the anthill of activity had come to a halt. I glanced around to find most, if not all, of the officers, detectives, and techs staring. Samuels, being his typical smart-mouthed self, said,
Everyone, I'd like you to meet Tessa Lamar. I'm sure her reputation precedes her. Now that you've seen her in action, you understand why.
My knees buckled and I took a step back, nearly dropping my sweetheart. Aaron growled under his breath,
Was that necessary? Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was that, or let them think you're a rookie who can't handle a death scene.
Chapter 10. I'd spent the previous hour scrubbing the floors and putting the finishing touches on Jolene's new room while Bryson mowed the lawn and Dottie dusted May's 132 knickknacks. My great-grandmother had done what she did best, supervised. Her little pink house had never looked so clean, a good thing because the lady from the social services was due to arrive in 10 minutes. Dottie and Gran May had decided to share the master, which left my childhood bedroom free. It'd be a tight squeeze, But we planned for Jolene to spend most of her time with me and Bryson. Plus, she had school and activities and friends. The girl would hardly be home. Grandma surveyed the gleaming floor.
All right, go put on clean clothes and brush your teeth.
I couldn't help but grin. She's not going to check our molars, Grandma.
Don't you sass me, Tessa Marie. She's going to want to talk to us, and that spaghetti sauce we had for lunch was heavy on the garlic.
She had a point. Yes, ma'am. I kissed her cheek and bounded down the front steps before she thought of more chores that needed done. The mower cut off behind Charlie's house. Bryson unbraided his hair as he came around the side of the house. He flashed me a smile that turned my knees to pudding. Between his muscles and those amazing Cherokee cheekbones, Bryson was the definition of a panty melter. Lucky for me, he was mine. Grandma says we should wash up before the lady from social services gets here. I closed the distance and slid my arms around his waist. Sweaty or not, I had a hard time keeping my hands off him when he wore his hair down.
We're both going to need a shower if you keep hugging me like that.
He might talk a good game, but he didn't let me go. In fact, he pulled me closer. We walked into our living room, and my sex thoughts vanished. I'd spent the entire day cleaning Grandma's house, but I hadn't bothered to do a thing here. Go get a shower. I'll tidy up a little. I walked into the kitchen and filled the sink. When we get around to renovating the kitchen, I want a dishwasher and a garbage disposal.
I'll add that to the list.
He kissed my cheek and disappeared into the bathroom. I hummed one of Charlie's favorite Glenn Campbell songs while I washed the dishes. Staring out the window at the spring flowers, I couldn't help but feel blessed. And soon we'd have a little girl around to share in the bounty. Haley's father had pulled some strings with social services to get Jolene's placement to the front of the line. The media coverage around her parents' murders had helped. Dottie's revised application was approved, but social services had to come and do a final home inspection before placing the child. With any luck, Jolene would be here tomorrow. I'd gone into the bedroom to change clothes when someone knocked on the front door. "I'll be right there." Bryson came around the corner wearing nothing but a towel.
Woman in a suit. Does she have the wrong address?
Probably, but do me a favor and stay out of sight. The last thing we needed was the social worker knowing Bryson and I were living in sin on the same property we planned to house Jolene. Besides, we weren't on the application. He nodded, but lowered his brows, clearly unhappy with my request. I pulled a t-shirt over my head, plastered a smile on my face, and opened the door. The woman looked from me to her paperwork and back again.
Dottie Nokoseka?
No, she's my great-aunt. She's in the little pink house. The social worker leaned back to check the house number and double-checked her paperwork.
I see.
My heart stuttered. The woman had my address on the form. I had a sinking feeling Dottie hadn't updated all of her information. My limited knowledge of the Department of Children and Family Services told me that we had a huge problem. "Come in and have a seat. I'll go get her. She must have lost track of time helping my elderly great-grandmother clean." I tried hard not to outright lie, but I'd twisted the truth into knots. "Thank you, Miss Tessa Lamar." I shook her hand.
Hattie White.
She stepped inside and looked around my undusted, unvacuumed, and unorganized living room. Judging by her crisp white button-down, stiff jacket, and sensible shoes, Miss Hattie White appreciated a tidy home. "Please have a seat. I'll be right back." I hurried into the bedroom to grab a pair of shoes. The window was open and the towel Bryson had worn around his waist laid in a heap beneath the sill. He must have shifted into his hawk and went flying. Good thing, considering the tap-dancing Dottie and I would have to do to pass the home visit. I returned to the front room. "Can I get you a drink?" She shook her head. Mind if I get started? I have a full afternoon. No, of course not. I mean, have at it. My voice came out as shrill as a knife on a grinding stone. Mind yourself on the construction around back. She gave me a curt nod. I ran to Graham May's like the devil was on my heels. Bursting into the kitchen, I nearly knocked poor Dottie on her backside. We have a problem. Tessa, my goodness, you scared the life out of me. Dottie fanned herself. The social worker is at Charlie's. Did you tell them you'd moved? The color drained from her face. It didn't cross my mind. She asked if anything had changed and we started talking about Charlie. I held up my hands and shook my head. It's okay. We can sort it out later, but for now, we'll go with the notion that you still live in your house. Dottie leaned closer and lowered her voice. That's fibbing. It is, but what if they make us start over with the application? Jolene doesn't have long before they send her off to the state mental hospital. Graham May came into the kitchen.
Tessa's right. It's only a short-term lie. You can update the paperwork once she's here.
All right, I guess. Dottie glanced between us. We have to hurry. She's already looking through the house. It's a mess. As soon as the words fell out of my mouth, I regretted them. Graham May shifted her dentures from side to side, then snapped them into place.
Tessa Marie, what have I told you about keeping a clean kitchen floor? It's the same as always wearing clean drawers. You never know when something will happen and someone will see them. I know, but no buts. Go.
Dottie and I hurried along the path between the two houses. We entered the living room at the same time Ms. White emerged from mine and Bryson's bedroom. Oh, crap. I did not like the look on her face. This is my great aunt, Dottie Nokoseka. Aunt Dottie, this is Miss Hattie White. Chapter 11. Nice to meet you. It's not often that we have someone continue the process after the death of a spouse. I'm sorry for your loss. Miss White offered Dottie a genuine smile, the sort that broke through her stern professional manner and showed the woman beneath the suit. Thank you. Charlie and I raised Tessa, but we never had children of our own. We were looking forward to opening our home. Dottie motioned to the couch. Please, have a seat. Can I get you something to drink? Miss White sat on the well-worn sofa. No, thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I'll be on my way. Dottie seated herself near the window and folded her hands in her lap. Her expression reminded me of one of the many times my high school principal had called us into his office. Are any of the substances in the jars and bottles in the third bedroom poisonous? Yes, some. My husband was full-blooded Cherokee. He believed in natural medicines. There's a lock on the door that requires a key. We'll keep the door locked when Jolene is here. Dottie glanced in my direction for help. Since no one here's using any of that stuff, I was thinking about boxing it up and donating it to the local tribe. I half lied. I would pack it up and store it until Bryson and I decided what to do with the medicine shop. Ms. White nodded. The clothes in the closet are Charlie's. My voice tightened. She eyed me until I lowered my chin. I'm concerned about the construction, but I understand the situation is of an urgent matter. It is. The new room will be finished within a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I'll be sure to keep Jolene away from the area. Dottie shifted her weight in the chair, letting me know I wasn't the only nervous one. Dr. Alexander spoke very highly of you, Mrs. Nokoseka. How long have you known him? My heart slammed against my ribs. Had she asked a trick question? Would a personal relationship with Haley's father cause a problem with the application? Did she know that Haley and I were friends or that I was working with Jolene? I've known him since Tessa and his daughter started college. He conducted the personal evaluation and home visit for mine and Charlie's original foster parent application, Dottie said. I resisted the urge to wipe the sweat from my forehead. She'd answered perfectly. I shouldn't have worried. Aunt Dottie had always possessed a grace that I envied. Miss White stood. That's all I need. Do you have any questions for me? My mother-in-law lives in the other house on the property. Would it be all right if Jolene spends time there as well? My poor heart couldn't take another shock. We were home free, and my God-fearing aunt opened a can of problems. Once she is in your care, you can and should treat her like any other child. She's permitted to visit friends and family as you see fit, and you'll be assigned a caseworker to answer any questions that arise. Miss White turned to me. You seem nervous. Do you have any questions? I laughed, too high and too shrill. I guess I am a little keyed up. I just know how much this means to Dottie and how important it is for Jolene to have a stable environment. When will we hear back from you? I'm not the one who makes the final decision, but you should hear back by midday tomorrow. I did the math in my head. Jolene's initial involuntary commitment had expired. If the approval process took longer than expected, I'd need to have Haley's father sign off on another extension. If you were me, would you spend the rest of the day fixing up the little bedroom? Ms. White winked before her professional expression slid back into place. I can't advise you on how to spend your time, but things tend to move quickly once the application is approved. The rockabye baby ringtone I'd assigned to Haley broke the tension. I tried to ignore it, but a voice whispered in the back of my mind to answer. I should get that. My friend is very pregnant. Go ahead. I'll show Miss White out. Dottie motioned for me to shoo and turned to the social worker. Thank you. And I apologize for... I hurried into the bedroom and answered the phone. Hi, Haley.
Tessa, it's Malcolm Alexander. Haley's in labor and we can't reach Scott. She's asking for you.
Haley's father sounded downright panicked. Quite the departure from the usually stoic psychiatrist. I'm on my way.
We're at Florida Hospital for Women on Rollins. Labor and delivery. I don't know the room.
Haley's groans came through the line loud enough that my uterus contracted in response. I'll be there as soon as I can. Even though I'd sat through a handful of Lamaze classes in case something like this happened, I knew next to nothing about pregnancy. 3 weeks early didn't seem critically early, but I had an unsettled feeling about the baby.
Thanks, Tessa. I'll let her know.
He disconnected the call. I grabbed my purse, checked for my keys, wallet, gum, cell phone. Where the hell is my cell phone? Bryson flew through the open bedroom window and shifted into his human form.
How'd it go?
How'd what go? I scanned the dresser, the bed, the floor.
The home visit?
He clamped my shoulder.
What's wrong?
Haley's in labor. Scott is missing, and I can't find my damned phone. Bryson smiled and lifted a brow.
Maybe I should drive.
For the love of everything good and holy, my phone was in my hand. That's a good idea. Should I call Aaron and ask him to put out an APB on Scott?
He's probably on a job site out of cell range. I'm sure he'll check in within an hour or two.
Bryson slid into a pair of boxers. I took in his body and sighed. I'd completely missed the fact he was standing in front of me naked. Either we were getting far too used to each other, or I truly wasn't fit to drive. On the way to the hospital, I must have dialed Scott 20 times before I gave up and left a voicemail.
Relax, babe. You won't be any good to her if you're stressed out.
Bryson took my hand, probably to keep me from calling again. I know, I just can't shake the feeling something's wrong with the baby. I watched the scenery go by in a blur. When Bryson didn't respond, I risked a glance and wished I hadn't. You too?
Since the last time I saw her,
His frown deepened and his hands tightened on the wheel.
the baby's life force was weak.
I opened my mouth to ask why he hadn't told me, but didn't want to hear the answer. Bryson would have said something if there were anything we could have done to help.
Unborn children are difficult to read. They walk the line between two worlds. Your job is to take care of Haley. The doctors will take care of the baby.
Despite having a pregnant best friend and mother, Bryson and I hadn't discussed births and newborns. I knew he wanted kids and he knew I didn't. We'd silently agreed to disagree on the topic. However, the idea that he'd leave the health of Haley's child to the doctors concerned me. Why can't we heal him if he's sick? Bryson turned into the parking garage.
New babies are complicated. They're half in and half out of the veil. Interfering with the natural order of things is never wise.
But we healed Betty Matthews.
From a shifter attack and a spiritual assault.
He pulled into a parking spot and cut the engine. I didn't like where this conversation was headed. And Aaron? You brought him back from the dead?
I healed Aaron to keep you from blaming yourself for his death.
He turned, and his dark eyes met mine. I gladly sank into their depths.
Our work with Betty and Aaron is spiritual warfare against dark magic. Think of our work with the local tribe at the medicine shop as family doctors. Healing a sick newborn is beyond our scope.
Then what about the folks who show up for healing?
We can cure the flu and maybe save someone from very early stage cancer. But we can't fix the lungs of a lifelong smoker. The very young or very old are always harder to help because, as I said, they straddle the line between the physical and spiritual worlds.
I nodded, though I hated the implications. Graham May was 86 years old. Despite what he said, I planned to use my magic to keep her alive until she begged me to let her rest or Jesus returned, whichever happened first. Chapter 12. The main hospital loomed across the street, a multi-storied reminder of the worst moments in my life. I'd said goodbye to my grandfather, almost lost Aaron, and had hunted a serial killer in that building. Charlie's loss left a hollow place inside me that I doubted would ever heal. Bryson took my hand and led me through the doors of the women's hospital. With some luck and a whole lot of prayer, a new person would enter my life. We followed the signs to labor and delivery and found Haley's father standing in the hall speaking to a man in scrubs. Bryson whispered,
I'll be in the waiting room if you need me.
I nodded and forced my feet to move closer to Dr. Alexander and the other man. The grim looks on their faces sent a chill down my back.
Tessa, thank God.
Malcolm Alexander hugged me.
This is Dr. Dennison. They're putting in an epidural now and will be taking Haley to surgery soon.
I winced, both at the idea of a needle going into my friend's spine and the mention of a cesarean section. Haley had feared giving birth via the toaster method. Can I see her before they take her? The doctor smiled.
Actually, Haley will be awake during the birth. She wants you there with her.
Oh my God. I doubted I'd be able to handle seeing a baby born the natural way, let alone one bursting out like that alien in the Sigourney Weaver movie. Okay.
Come with me. I'll show you where to suit up.
Dr. Dennison wore a "this happens every day" smile, but I wasn't buying it. I should let Bryson know. He's in the waiting room.
I'm heading that way. I'll tell him.
Haley's father had the nerve to look relieved I'd shown up in time to save him from seeing his daughter sliced open. Thanks. My stomach churned. I couldn't remember the last thing I'd eaten, but I prayed it wouldn't make a return appearance.
Relax, it'll be fine. Haley's pre-eclamptic and the baby's heartbeat decelled during several contractions. It's best for mother and baby to deliver now.
I followed him to a hallway where he handed me off to a nurse who instructed me to put on a gown, booties, mask, and paper cap. The getup reminded me of the death scene and that horrible spirit child. I should have checked in with Aaron about the case, but I'd spent my day preparing for the home visit. I was turning out to be a bad fiancé. When my guys had first discussed a polyamorous relationship, I'd worried that I'd be the odd woman out. It broke my heart to think Aaron might feel like a third wheel.
Ready?
The nurse's voice brought me back from my mental procrastination. Not really. I mean, what if I faint? Her smile told me she'd answered the same question 100 times a day, every day since dirt was young.
You'll be seated at her head. Don't peek over the curtain if you don't want to see the show.
Right. I shuffled into the operating room. Haley's voice chased away some of my trepidation. If she could sound downright chipper talking to the people about to open up her belly, I could stand there and hold her hand. Only I couldn't because they'd strapped her arms out to her sides. If they stood her up, they could crucify her. Focus, Tessa. Focus. Hey, sorry I'm late. If I'd smiled any brighter, my lips would have touched my ears. A wasted effort behind the mask. Tessa, thank goodness. You're not late. Just in time. Her entire body shook, as if she were freezing. She flexed her fingers to reach for me. I took her hand and sat, as the nurse suggested, with my back to the messy business. Are you okay? I mean, all things considered? Tired, and can't stop shaking, but I'm good. Dr. Dennison tells me I'll meet my son in about 5 minutes. She had tubes under her nose, the same awful shower cap as me, an IV in her arm and paper draped over her pregnant belly, but she looked beautiful.
The shaking is a side effect of the medication. It'll pass,
the doc said.
Okay, Haley. You're going to feel some pressure.
The blood in the air caused my firebird to stir, and the wet sounds behind me made my stomach roll. I couldn't see the goings-on behind the drape, but I didn't need to. Haley's body rose and fell, shifted and stilled, struggled and yielded to the assault to free the child.
You doing okay?
A nurse at Haley's left leaned in. I feel faint, I said at the same time the patient answered yes. The nurse patted Haley's shoulder. Almost there. She squeezed my hand, or maybe I squeezed hers. Either way, we held on like the other was the last life vest in a sinking ship. Cries, soft at first, but growing in both volume and intensity, filled the air. I wanted to turn, to look, to see the brand new life, but I didn't dare.
You have a beautiful son,
Dr. Dennison announced to the operating room. Haley laughed through her tears. The nurse held the wailing baby on the safe side of the drape for a split second before whisking him away.
They're gonna take him to the NICU for observation,
another nurse or tech or doctor said behind his mask. Is something wrong? Haley's voice sounded as if she'd spoken through water.
It's a precautionary measure.
He turned and followed the nurse with the baby. Haley's fingers fell from my hand. Go with him. Make sure he's okay. My chest tightened when her eyes drifted shut and her mouth went slack. It's the medication. She'll sleep through the remainder of the procedure, a nurse said. My legs wobbled when I stood. She'd asked me to look after her son, and that's what I intended to do. Unfortunately, leaving the room meant turning from the wall and toward the bloody mess of my best friend's abdomen. Lightning bugs danced in the corner of my eyes, and the room went dark. Chapter 13. Staring into the eyes of Haley and Scott's newborn son, I forgot about the stitches along my brow and the dull ache in my head. I forgot all of the reasons I swore I'd never have children. I forgot my grief, self-doubt, and fears. Even sitting in the NICU, holding a 6-pound miracle in my arms, the world seemed like a place of hope and dreams.
Hey, Tessa. Thanks for everything. I was stuck in Lake County with no cell coverage.
Scott leaned in and kissed the baby's head. How's Haley doing? I stood and handed the proud father his son. Scott fumbled around as if his hands were too big to handle such a small treasure.
She's in and out. How's your head?
My hand went to the bandage. It's fine, but my pride's another story. He settled into the rocking chair and stared at the baby.
We named him Aiden Scott.
I love it. I squeezed his shoulder. The way he stared at the infant stole my breath. He'd be the kind of father that attended every ball game, teacher meeting, and school play. He'd be the kind of dad that taught by example, that stuck around, that never let his child doubt he was wanted and treasured and loved.
Are you okay?
Scott's voice tore me from my thoughts. Surprised to find my hand pressed against my chest, I motioned toward him and the baby. I'm great, just overwhelmed. I should go check in on Haley and find Bryson.
He's with Aaron in the waiting room.
Scott winked.
They have some news for you.
Had the social worker called? I couldn't keep the excitement from my face. Grinning like a kid with a key to the world's largest candy store, I left the NICU.
There she is.
Aaron drew me into a tight embrace, pulled back to get a look at my bandage, and hugged me again. Bryson stood.
How's the baby?
A little jaundiced, and he has a slight fever, but perfect. I guess all that worry was for nothing.
It wasn't wasted. It was your first duty as an honorary aunt to be concerned.
I can't say why. It could have been the emotions from the day, the fact that mother and baby were doing well, the familiar sense of longing for a father I never knew, or that for the first time in my life I had a maternal instinct. But I burst into tears. Aaron dropped his right arm and Bryson moved to my side. They wrapped me in warmth as I blubbered on about the baby and the birth and life and love and them.
Since you're already crying, is now a good time to tell you Jolene will be moving in as soon as she's released?
Bryson's laughter filled the room and my heart. Really? I assumed so, but it's really happening? Aaron nodded.
Daddy called us when she couldn't reach you.
I have so much to do. Groceries and fixing up the extra bedroom. I should go see her before she's discharged. I pulled away and ran through my mental to-do list.
Forensics cleared her in her stepfather's death. No way a girl her size could have caused his wounds. The angle was all wrong.
Aaron ran a hand through his hair.
It's a gray area, but I should be okay visiting the house.
I think that's great, but are you sure you don't want to wait until after the promotion happens? He kissed my cheek.
I'm sure.
I nuzzled into his chest. Okay, but can we spend tonight on the couch with some beer and a little fooling around? Aaron laughed and Bryson's eyes widened. I'd managed to shock them both.
I'm in.
Aaron said.
Sounds good.
Bryson glanced at his watch.
I'll pick up some groceries and check on May and Dottie.
God bless him. He knew how much I hated shopping for food. I need to say goodbye to Haley and head to South Orlando to speak to Jolene.
Mind if I tag along?
Aaron stuffed his hands in his back pockets.
I'm not due back at the station today.
Sure, I'd like that. We've been so busy lately. I miss you. I hugged him again, only this time I picked up a scent I hadn't smelled since I was a tweeny bopper. Love's baby soft perfume. Why do you smell like ode to baby powder? He gave me an odd look.
I was holding you and you were holding the baby? On that note,
Bryson kissed my cheek.
I'll see the two of you later.
Aaron and I parted ways with Bryson in the hall. I poked my head into Haley's room, half expecting her to be asleep. Instead, I found her sitting up, clicking through television channels. She tossed the remote to the side. Come in, please. I'm going out of my mind waiting for the nurse to come take me to the NICU. Have you seen him yet? I took the chair next to the bed. No, and it's driving me. What the heck happened to your head? She motioned to the bandage. My cheeks heated. You don't remember? Haley shook her head nice and slow, then met Aaron's gaze and grinned. She passed out in the operating room, didn't she?
Afraid so.
You wouldn't think it was funny if you'd seen what they did to you to get Aiden out. I shuddered at the memory of the gore. You work with homicide detectives. Are you telling me you haven't gotten over your weak stomach? She giggled, groaned, and hugged a pillow to her belly. Ow, please, no laughing. Though he hadn't moved, the baby powder scent clinging to Aaron tickled my nose. Do you smell Love's baby soft? Haley sniffed and shook her head. All I smell is myself, and I'm not allowed to shower. It's probably left over from snuggling the cutest baby in the world. I played it off with a smile, but the magic pooling in my gut worried me. My spirit animal had a tendency to notice things before my human brain. Where's your father? Haley shrugged one shoulder, but I'd caught the gleam in her eye. He left to initiate the discharge paperwork for a patient. Anyone I know? Oh, I think you'll be getting to know her quite well. Honestly, Tessa, why didn't you tell me you conned Dottie into fostering Jolene?
Would you expect anything less?
Aaron moved behind me and rested his hand on my shoulder.
Once she makes her mind up, there's no stopping her.
She glanced between the two of us. Don't get me wrong, it's brilliant. Professional boundaries be damned. Dad is planning to take over her case to cover your ass and protect your license. Make sure he sees her at least twice a month. Thanks for looking out for me. While I'd charged ahead without thought of the consequences, my friends and family had made sure I didn't step into a big steaming pile of crap. I owe you one. Like I said before, Jolene is special. A nurse pushed a wheelchair into the room. Ready to go see your baby? Haley's entire face brightened. Yes, please. I'm dying to hold him. I gave her a half hug, half pat to avoid hurting her. I'll be back soon. Call me if you or Scott need anything. Thanks, but I have a feeling you'll have your hands full. Chapter 14. Aaron and I sat in a beige room at a beige table in beige plastic chairs. A smattering of books and toys littered a shelf, but did little to brighten the atmosphere. How could anyone, let alone a child, heal in a place like this? A psych tech ushered Jolene into the room.
Press the buzzer when you're finished.
Thank you. I knew the drill. Don't leave the patient alone, and don't wander the halls unescorted. While I appreciated the safety protocols, it sobered me that places like this were needed. Jolene stood near the door. She glanced between Aaron and me with a weary expression. I wanted to pull her into my arms and comfort her. Instead, I lowered my voice and bided my time. "Hi, Jolene. This is my friend Aaron." The girl plucked at her miniature-sized scrubs. "There's something we want to talk to you about. Would you like to sit?" I motioned to the chair beside me and furthest from Aaron. She shook her head. "Would you feel more comfortable if he stood over by the window?" Without waiting for instructions, Aaron stood and moved to the far side of the room. Jolene hurried to the table and sat in the chair he'd vacated. She dipped her chin, hiding her face with a mass of tangled curls. I mouthed thank you to Aaron and leaned closer to Jolene. When she didn't tense or pull back, I placed my hand on her shoulder. "Jojo, how would you like to come and live with me for a while?" The girl chewed her lower lip. "My great-grandmother and aunt live in a little pink house, and I live right next door." After her reaction to Aaron, I hesitated to mention Bryson. "We have a bedroom for you in both houses. You can pick which you like better or use both of them." She looked up and tilted her head. "There's a big yard, and we have a dog named Maddie. She's really good at snuggling and stealing treats." The smile tugging at the corners of her mouth was by far the sweetest thing I'd ever seen. Well, except for Aiden Scott, but not much could compete with a newborn baby. Jolene rested her head on my chest. Her trembling gave way to full-on shoulder-racking sobs. "Shh, baby girl. It's going to be okay." I wrapped my arm around her and ran my fingers through her hair. Behind us, Aaron coughed. I glanced over my shoulder and caught the homicide detective wiping his eyes. Jolene peeked past me to Aaron before easing back into her chair. She motioned to the buzzer on the wall, then to me. I said, "You have to stay here until the social worker comes to get you." The hope in Jojo's eyes blinked out like a candle deprived of oxygen. I lifted her chin. "I know it's hard, but can you be brave a little while longer? They'll bring you to me tomorrow."
Haley said her father initiated the discharge today. Technically, I qualify to transport.
Aaron spoke in such a hushed tone I'd barely heard him. He'd made his point without giving the girl false hope. Once the paperwork was signed, it was a matter of waiting for the hospital to arrange transportation with the social worker. Jojo glanced between us with a knowing expression. She'd caught on to more of the conversation than I'd thought. "We'll try, but no promises, okay?" She nodded. I turned to Aaron. "My phone's in the locker outside. Dr. Alexander is in my contacts list."
I'm on it.
Aaron pressed the buzzer. Jolene moved her mouth as if speaking and motioned with her hands. I shook my head. "I don't understand." She mimed writing, pointed to the shelves, and shook her head. "I don't have any paper either." The girl huffed, pointed to Aaron, to me, and hugged herself. "Oh," I nodded. "Yes, he's my boyfriend." She made a face I couldn't quite read, something between curious and resolved. The tech opened the door and escorted Aaron out. Their footsteps and voices faded down the hall, but the scent of Love's baby soft lingered. In fact, it intensified after he'd left. Jolene stared at the wall and nodded, as if listening to someone or something. Her blue eyes went wide and she shook her head. "What's wrong?" I followed her gaze to an empty space. My magic flared, as it had since I'd met Aaron in the waiting room at the hospital. I focused on the energy in the room in hopes of finding the spirit communicating with Jolene. Nothing. I'd encountered resistance from ghosts in the past, but nothing like the stone wall surrounding this one. The smell set off alarm bells. The spirit had followed me since the hospital, but why? Jojo, who are you talking to? The girl turned her head and glared with such hatred that I inched away. She marched to the shelves, grabbed a book, and launched it in my direction. It fell short. Dodging a second book, I shot to my feet. What in the world's gotten into you? Stop it! She turned her little blonde head in my direction. My blood turned to ice and my magic swirled like a tornado below my skin. The sweet girl who'd clung to me moments before reminded me of the spirit child at the murder scene. Same hair, same age, same screw you expression. Jolene grimaced, closing her eyes and tightening her fists. She threw her head back open-mouthed. I could all but hear her silent scream. As quickly as it had come, the tension in the room fled. Jolene's shoulders sagged and my magic stilled. I took a step closer. Are you okay? She shook her head and gave me a look that reminded me of a scolded puppy. I knelt in front of her. Listen to me. It might take some time to figure it all out, but I can help you. I've talked to them my entire life. Jolene hung her head. Whatever or whoever had interrupted our conversation had done more damage than toss around a couple of books. The little girl had withdrawn back into her shell. The buzzer sounded and Aaron came into the room. His cop face in place, he took in the books on the floor and what I could only assume to be a freaked-out look on my face.
Tessa? Everything okay?
He spoke in a steady voice that gave no hint he'd noticed anything amiss. Just a little high-spirited fun. I winked at Jolene, hoping to earn a smile. She refused to meet my gaze. Aaron ran his hand over the back of his neck.
It's a no-go. The state's her legal guardian. Their rep has to take custody from the hospital.
Disappointment, with a heavy dose of relief, filled me. I'd hoped to bring her home with us, but after what had happened, I wanted to speak to Bryson about her before exposing May and Dottie to whatever or whoever was haunting the girl. Jojo, you're gonna have to stay here one more night. Please, try not to let anyone get you into trouble. I had no idea if the staff monitored the room, but I didn't dare mention spirits or ghosts in case the conversations were recorded. Love's baby soft perfume filled the air. Jolene's spine went rigid. As if fighting her own body, the girl zombie walked toward Aaron. The cold magic that allowed me to communicate with spirits flooded my nervous system. Before I could make sense of what was happening, my firebird spiraled upward like it did when I prepared to shift forms. Hot and cold magic battled for dominance beneath my skin. The effect left me gasping for breath. Jolene stopped a foot from him and glared.
Tessa, something's wrong. I feel...
Aaron groaned and collapsed into a heap on the floor.
This has been part 1 of the Spirit Child, Tessa Lamar novels, Book 3. Written by Kathryn M. Hearst. Narrated by Holly Adams. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please subscribe to Kathryn's channel where you can find part 2 of The Spirit Child, along with more of Kathryn's paranormal and contemporary romance novels.